Good evening, everyone. My name is Longevity John, and I'll be your host this evening for yet another great and interesting live stream from the Duncan Showroom, a wonderful venue, unique listening room in wonderful downtown Duncan. Yes, we're bringing you a series of different shows of people we think that you'll be interested in listening to. Tonight, this is going to be a whole show devoted to the sitar. And James Hamilton, I ran into him a while back, a couple of 3-4 years ago, and wow. Someone who dedicates that many years to learning an instrument, and with that goes all the philosophies and the music structures that go with that. It's quite an interesting journey that we're going to go on today. And because if you take a look at our set, you'll notice it's set up more like a living room. And so today, it's going to be a workshop. Yeah, we're going to have a semi-workshop in our living room, so to speak. And it's going to be James Hamilton. James, take it away.
Thank you very much, John, and thanks for having me back again. And I think the first time I played for one of your events was at the 39 Days of July, which again will be coming up this year. And I think this is my 4th or 5th time playing here at the showroom. What I decided I'd like to do is give a little background to what Indian music is about, Indian classical music, and touching on folk music and other music. I've had this ambition to basically demonstrate through my own personal experiences with music how I got interested in doing sitar, and then following through with that, try to explain what the music is about. And we have a little beat track that goes with this presentation. Probably have to put a password in to get it going. All right. So, I had studied piano for a while when I was living in Quebec, and that was okay. I lived in Val d'Or and did piano with Mrs. Heron up there. And eventually I decided to switch over onto other instruments. And when I was, I believe, in about 1973, I took up sitar. But then rewinding a bit, I wanted to say why I was interested in sitar. One reason was that I felt that I could identify with melody. And one of the melodic themes that I used to hear on TV in the day was this. Theme to a show called Terry Lafon, which is about a sort of a French version of Robin Hood, who used to have a sling made of leather with used to fire projectiles at Anglo-Saxon soldiers with this thing. Irrespective of that, whatever your political persuasions were or are, it was a nice tune. Let's just do a little transposition into India. I was living in a village area outside of Jamshedpur, and it was about 1980, 81, and I started to hear these songs. Like when I got introduced to somebody, and it was interesting, they would tend to sing a song that somehow would incorporate you into the song. Like this. Videshi bandhu asane. Videshi means foreigner. moral of this song was Videshi Bandhu Asana Open Corona Konogi. There's two things there. One is as in Terry LaFawn, and the words of the song were basically saying, if don't fall in love with foreigners because they're going to take off and leave you, and you'll never see them again. So just don't do it. That was song number 1. Then song number 2. Bear that in mind. Then another friend of mine who was actually a singer had written a song of his own. That's night has become morning. Which means bees are buzzing in my ears. And Madhu ke hoye chivibor. After tasting honey, I've become intoxicated. Kotayama sham natubo. So what I noticed, and I'm sure some of the astute musicians out there will notice, is that all 3 songs are essentially the same tune. They just start in a different point, or they do it they articulate it slightly differently. So it's basically one melody that's being like, okay, we'll play this part of it, then we'll play that part of it. And this time, this song will start here instead of there, but it's the same melody that's going around. And this is very much what Indian raga is like. It's like a sampling of melodies within a certain range, and you can start in certain places or approach it in one way or the other. But as long as you keep to the guidelines, you'll have the tune in hand. So the tune that I'm going to discuss, or the raga I'm going to discuss today, is a raga called Kafi, which is K-A-F-I. The word is actually derived from Farsi, and it's a word meaning abundance. And in India, the raga Kafi is associated with springtime and with the festival of Holi. So that's the time it's heard the most, but it can be played at any time of year. So, Kafi, scale. So, basically, what Western music would call Dorian. And then some typical phrases. From Terry LaFawn. Exactly the same type of thing. Another accidental. Composition in the classical format. And remember this phrase from Terry LaFawn, because you're going to hear it. this type of composition is one of the earliest ever played on sitar, probably from about 1750, and it was introduced by a musician named Mazid Khan, and it has a formulaic presentation in terms of the stroke patterns, and it also loops within a cycle of 16 beats. So I'll start again. We'll get to 1. Here's 1, 2, 3. Currently, this type of composition is played about at this tempo, although it can be played quicker. Traditionally, it was played like in the 19th century. Probably when it first started off, it was played probably about 50% faster than this. Another point that some people who are astute followers of this music will know that in those days, the sitar did not have these strings on the side, so there was no playing of this in between every stroke. So on with a little development. So after every extemporization or improvisation, whatever you would like to call it, I'm coming back to the composition and aiming that right to the first beat. The main beat of the cycle, which is there, is also what we call the rhythmic center of gravity, that the improvisations that you're playing tend to gravitate towards that point, like this. That's the first beat. So after you've been doing this for 15, 20, 30, 40 years, you usually internalize what that beat is, and then you know when to come in. And that is part of the art of improvising or developing, is to play aspects of the rag, features of the rag, and join it in with the rhythmic cycle. Okay, so I'm just going to stop the rhythmic cycle for a second, because it's time for a joke. I was lying asleep, lying awake, I think it was. It could have been asleep or awake, maybe a combination of the two, and I was trying to think how to present what a rhythmic cycle is in an interesting way. So, this is going to take a drink. I remember the Ed Sullivan Show, which I'm sure a lot of you people are familiar with, and every once in a while Ed would have the cameras point at the audience, like you out there, and he would point out different celebrities, like Rock Hudson, Mary Tyler Moore, and to our surprise, us Montrealers, there was Jean Drapeau, or as we knew him, Jean Drapeau. The mayor of Montreal would be sitting in the audience. Now, how is this relevant to a cycle? Okay, I'll get there. You see, one of Jean Drapeau's big accomplishments was the Montreal Olympics in 1976. And his big stadium was referred to as the Big O, like as in a circle. And it's a complex situation with dealing with constructions and unions and probably with the mafia and whatever in Montreal. But people came to wonder, like, what was going on with their money? Like, where was the money going to? And sometimes the Big O was referred to as, or personified as, a toilet in which money was being thrown into and disappearing. And part of the reason why they believed that was that there was a rumor going around that the cement trucks were actually coming in, pouring cement, getting paid their $1,000 or whatever, then driving around the block empty and coming back in and getting another $1,000 and driving around like in circles. Hence, a cycle. So I won't get into that aspect of the thing, the corruption involved in it, but what is important here is that the idea is something is going around and coming back again, as with this cycle. And I'll demonstrate it again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 1. So, put this down for a minute. In most Western music, you have the idea of clapping out a beat. You might be clapping out something like this. But Indian classical music combines clap, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, wave, clap. So it has, teen tal has 3 claps in it. That's what a teen tal, the 16-beat rhythmic cycle, literally means 3 claps. So it has those 3 claps. And it is the standard rhythmic cycle used in classical music. There is literally hundreds, if not thousands, of compositions in this cycle. In more recent years, you would hear some people play in other cycles, but predominantly most of the classical compositions are in 16 beats. And the cycle can go at this tempo or it can go up. And the general progression of Indian music is to increase the tempo. So let's do that. So here we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 1. So, again, applying a rag, like Kafi in this, we can come up with this. Again, the rhythmic center of gravity coming to the 5th. So compositions in Indian music, their instrumental compositions are called gat, G-A-T, as opposed to geet, which is a song that has words. Gat is an instrumental composition. And typically compositions, so-called compositions, is a word that sort of applies to what is going on in Indian music. This is a fixed thing, but it's very fluid in its own way. So these type of compositions, this gat, was some believe this is what we call a Reza Khani gat, from a composer named who came up with this formula named Reza Khan. However, it is also possible that it existed before him. In my thesis, I speculated that Indian classical music, at least instrumental music, may have roots much earlier than 1750, and one of the big names of Indian music in the past was Amir Khusro, and it's possible that instrumental compositions like this were played on other instruments and then became adapted to sitar. So I, in tribute to Amir Khusro, I label these type of compositions with that particular stroke pattern. I label it after him, even though it's speculative, but I thought to try and distinguish that particular pattern from the myriads of other stroke patterns that are used in compositions. Generally speaking, sitar playing has, at least at this tempo, has 4 stroke patterns. One is this. One is da, ra, da, ra, da, ra, da, ra. Next one Reza Khani compositions tend to use those patterns in some way or another, such as that's one example. Here's another one. That one was created by Mohammed Dabir Khan, who is in the direct lineage from Tansen as a vocalist, but also has some command of instrumental music. So literally, there are hundreds of compositions in every particular rag. A lot of people don't know more than one or two, but I just want to play a couple more that I learned from my teacher to show what library of compositions he was. So these compositions all have a similar function. They are a starting point for improvising. So taking one of the earlier ones that I started with, I'm going to show a couple of developments, instrumental developments on them. And they'll be more in an older style playing because I sort of prefer that to do to a lot of the contemporary styles. And that style was called Tantrakari, and Tantra in this reference means string. And what you do with the string in terms of stroke patterns. So I'm going to play a couple of examples of Tantrakari development of the first quick composition I played. keeping with the increasing the tempo, we're going to move up to another speed. This comes to a subject known as jala, like this. So the progression of a concert, I guess you would call it, is something that has been established probably over the past 200, 300 years, is that in playing, you tend to start slow and gradually increase the tempo up to fast speed. I've been playing, giving a general idea about this, but also trying to play it in a way that people can sort of see what I'm playing. I find there's a tendency in playing these days that a lot of people want to play extremely fast and then nobody knows what they actually did. And there was this fellow student of mine in India, he used to say, playing fast is just a distraction. Like, what are they actually doing? And my singing teacher in India, he put it in a different way. He said, anybody can play fast. Let's see you play slow. And I think that is a very true point. Like, moving your fingers fast, that's fine. Let's see you do this. That is where art is. It's not in da 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 da. It's like this sitar player. Actually, that little section I played. Is from a book that he wrote, and he used to say that the slow parts of Indian music was where the real art was, and he lamented that nowadays the audience can't listen to the same rag being played for hours on end, and it's become fashionable due to the fast pace of life for everybody to play, short artistic points. Things and then play, a lot of da 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 da. And the slower parts, which was called alap or introduction, that in itself, I've heard a couple of people play the alap for an hour and a half, and that's that's one way of showing your artistic merit. And I really found that those are probably the best moments of Indian music, is hearing somebody play unaccompanied alap or introduction. And I guess with the commercialization of music, the audience's attention span might have gone down a bit, and so they tend to play less of the what I would consider true art and more of the da 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 type stuff, which I won't lament too long, because if I play at places or whatever, I like to play as much of the slow music as I can. Today I just demonstrated some of the fast stuff because it's easier for people to concentrate on Indian music, I find, if you have a beat going on. Only the real connoisseurs who have been with the system for years can appreciate the slow, unaccompanied parts of the music. Okay, so what I have tried to show is that starting with a certain melodic formula, that is from a theme song to a television show that I used to listen to, Terry Lafon, and then getting into folk music. In India has a lot of elements that are rag-like, and I remember, this is another sort of funny story. I'm living in a rural area, like I said, near Jamshedpur, and I'd made some recordings of this music, and a very renowned sarod player, which is another Indian instrument, had heard that I had some recordings, and he wanted to hear them. So he sent one of his students over to my house to find it. The only problem is that in India, you don't always get electrical power. Like, there's hours on end when you have no light or no way of, finding stuff. So this guy showed up when there was no light, so I had to rummage through my cassette tapes, and I said, oh, it must be this one. And unfortunately, it wasn't that one. And then I got a reputation as a cheat because I had cheated the guy. I had not given him the right tape. So I didn't know what to do about that, but I just let it go. And then about 25 years ago, 25 years? Well, from the time that he had asked for the tape was probably about 1979. And the time that I showed him what was actually on the tape was, I would think, probably in the mid-90s. So this throat player was giving a workshop. And I said, oh, by the way, remember you wanted the music? Well, here it is. I played it. And he said, oh, that's just like rock Kafi. I said, yeah, you can say that. There's elements that are like rock Kafi. There are some other elements in there like... To me, that's like another rag. Jai Jayanti. But there's a mixture. And in the, there has been, amongst Indian musicians and theoreticians, a lot of discussion about sort of the, what do you call the chicken or the egg thing? Where did this music come from? Did the ragas exist first, or did this folk music exist first? And it comes to a philosophical point, because some people believe that ragas are somehow eternal melodies that exist out there in the universe, and we just tap into them, and from that point we can express the raga correctly. However, from the practical point of view, I think a lot of the ragas arrived on Earth, if they were ever out there. They arrived there through genres like folk music and other types of music that weren't classical. And then the classical musicians took these up and expressed them. And one of the, I just got to recalled something my teacher said. I remember when I was in India, you could hear a lot of these bhajans or folk tunes. And there was one. It was actually one of my teacher's favorite rags. It's called Surdasi Malhar. But the folk tune, or the bhajan, the devotional tune, is something that obviously predated that rag, at least in arriving on Earth. And you'll hear these bhajans by this, I guess you'd call him mendicant or a composer of devotional songs. And a lot of them follow this line. Like just I said earlier that a lot of the folk songs I'd heard were, well, a lot of Surdasi bhajans are. Like that. And then the classical musicians found this and they made compositions like this. So you can see it's very close to the original bhajan tune. And there's numerous examples of that, rags that are close to folk tunes. I remember there's a friend of mine at university, his name was Panchananda Sardar. He was a very interesting character. Grew up in a village area in India, and he he basically ran away from the village to avoid arranged marriage, I think. I don't know if I'm disclosing too much information about him. But he started making a living singing folk songs on the radio and teaching people folk music. And he was also a classical sitar player, but that had come later. One of the tunes that he taught me was this. Try it again. typical sound of Bengali folk song. And the wording sounds a little bit convoluted to the average Western ear, but it's basically purity is love. Amare, to me. Chalona didn't want me. Ray Kaliya Sona. Kaliya is another name for Krishna. But it's like, it's basically, I never could fall in love type thing. I was not, I don't know, lovable or something. It's like it's hard to wrap your brain around it, but that was the general gist of the thing. And I learned this rag from my teacher, which was any good musician out there who studied Indian music should know this. What rag is that? What's this? Get a good tempo going in. Common phrasing like it's like watching those those YouTube videos where people say, okay, you can now stop the video and think about what rag that is. And if you want, you can put it in the comments section. So, let's try that. Assuming you've stopped the video and replayed it, the rag is Shinjoti. Okay, so on that note, I think I'm going to wrap it up for the evening. I actually did more than I expected to do, which is always nice. And thank you to everybody for tuning in. And I'm sure there'll be more people tuning in the future. If you have any questions or comments about the presentation, please let me know. I know it wasn't perfect. Nothing really is. And but I did my best under the existing circumstances. And as a final joke, and as a final bit of information, I found that nowadays a lot of stores are not taking cash, so I would like to advise everybody to use the Christie Clark solution to that, i.e., money laundering. So what you do, you take your money, put it in a bag, put it in the sink, and wash it with Listerine or something. And then that saves the tellers, whoever you come up to, the problem of having to deal with, possibly contaminated money. So, Christie Clark, money laundering is where it's at. Thank you. Bye.
Well, James, I got to say that was a wonderful way to end it. But just before we fade out with something that you'll play for us, I want to thank you for doing this today. And I was hoping maybe. I think the response will be that we should continue doing this, that every so often you should come up and do more of these educational style films. I just, whether or not I retained it, I learned a lot today, and I'll definitely go back and look at the video again and again. And you also, I've seen you before, we've had dancers
Yep.
belly dancers that have joined in with you, and actual drummers and percussionists that work with you.
Yep.
And you're out of Victoria?
Yeah, I'm out of Victoria. I live in Victoria. I work in Nanaimo when I'm working. And that's why I come to Duncan. And those people don't know that Duncan is like halfway between Victoria and Nanaimo.
It's paradise.
Yep.
A rather fun place to be.
I have more friends in Duncan than I do in Victoria or in Nanaimo. This place is a really good place to meet people and,
Well,
connect.
we're not exactly sure if the 39 days of July will start on June 26th. It might start on July 1st. It might even be the 39 days of August. But somehow or other this summer, we're going to resurrect. We're not going to get out of the summer without having a lot of music in downtown Duncan. And we had you slotted in, and we'd like to make sure we can continue to get you in there, because what a soothing way to sit in the park and listen for an hour. Wow. Thanks for the journey once again, James. And we hope
Thanks
to see
again
you
for
again
having
soon.
me.
Gonna play us out a little tune?
Sure, I can do that. Let's get the pick sack on.
I'm sure Ted put up the tip jar information earlier on during the set. If you can, it would be greatly appreciated, so we can continue to bring you all of these live shows from the Duncan Showroom in wonderful downtown Duncan. Can't you just smell the incense burning?
I was also Jinjoti. Jinjoti.